I used to singing, baby. Oh, come around, why don't you come around? Why don't you come around? Why don't you
good if you know me.
Come around, why don't you come around? Why don't you sing about a melody? Oh, come around, why don't you come around? Why don't you come around? Why don't
You good if you know me.
come around? Why don't you come around? Why don't you anything you want to sing about? Just sing it all out now, sing it all out.
Selektah.
Let the world know what life's all about. Come around, why don't you come around? Why don't you
Okay, came in a little bit late on the beat. That's my fault. I need to pull the trigger a little faster on that. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. This is DSP News, the unreliable ones. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the newsroom and welcome to the Goutopia News Network, your unreliable source for DSP News. This is the Snort Report, brought to you by SnortBucks Coffee Company, the best beverage company. Let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, how you guys doing? Hopefully you guys are doing well. This right here, sorry, cough drop, my bad. This right here is a bit of a follow-up to the previous video where we were talking a little bit about Phil's legacy and so on and so forth. MrHuth stuff as well as SnortBucks came in on the clutch. We're going with the MrHuth stuff version for our pseudo Snort Report, and then for when the Snort Report comes back, you'll see the SnortBucks counterpart of that during those broadcasts. So there you go with that. Big ups to both MrHuth stuff and SnortBucks. The Gout universe works in mysterious ways, and it's amazing how things happen the way they do. In any case, ladies and gentlemen, we are here with, yet again, MrHuth stuff, DSPGaming, 4th place legacy. This was published on January 9th of 2021. The link will be down in the description. Now, let's go ahead and get to our favorite part of the video, Chewing the Fat with GTG, also known as Welcome to my TED Talk. Now, I had, in the last video, talked about Phil's decline in abilities and know-how and his overall skill when it comes to fighting games, but mainly Street Fighter in particular. And I also emphasized the fact that if you watch the restreams of Street Fighter, especially LSB, you actually see the growth that is made by people who were just part of the restream, challenging Phil week after week. You're seeing how well they're growing, you see how they're progressing, and you see them winning. Not just in Third Strike, but now you're starting to see a lot of that branch over in Super Turbo, outside of some of the random killers that came out of nowhere to body Phil either which way. Phil is trying hard, very hard, to scrounge together what little he has left. His FGC legacy is garbage, to be honest with you. And if you guys are following me over from the Fight Club channel, or second edition, whatever, same thing, you see that you can kind of see how we're already going through videos breaking down, or at least investigating, I should say, his FGC lore, his history, some of his grudge matches, some of the issues that he's had on YouTube and off. It's going to be a pretty fun excursion, if you will, over the span of the next year, but it'll be worthwhile, and I hope to uncover quite a bit. In any case, we're going to go over here and get to see some of this nonsense. Now, if I remember correctly, the video that MrHuth stuff is using is from Bill Purnell, if I remember correctly. It was from one of the leaked, it's from one of the leaked private Q&A videos, the Patreon ones. They were either, I thought they were $50, but I think they might actually be $20. Excuse me if I don't have the full details on it, but it's either a $20 or $50 perk where you can pay Phil to do a private Q&A. He'll answer any questions you want. That is actually rather crucial. One, when we had the DSP leaks, when DSPGaming essentially was demonetized and all that nonsense. But this video in question was actually sent to Bill Purnell directly, if I remember correctly. But one of the biggest things that came out of those videos was that that hidden rant that he had about Review Tech USA. Absolutely glorious salt of the highest quality. That pink Himalayan piggy salt of the just beautiful and rare too. Very, very rare. But I think some of this video actually stems from that. Now I haven't, from a video of that caliber. I haven't seen this video in a very long time, but I'm hoping to, it's illuminating illuminating, and it sheds the light on some of Phil's stupidity and bad decision making, which is kind of what we exploit anyway over here, even though you don't really exploit it if it's in abundance, but whatever. And before we get back into the Snort report, I had found the Hate Live, where Phil talked about T Carter. And remember how in his 7-year debunking stream, he said it prior to that it was a small segment, his tribute to T, and he didn't actually exploit him for money, and it wasn't anything like that. It was just a small part of a much bigger podcast. I found that podcast, and I found the T segment, which is about 40 fucking minutes. And the whole podcast itself is less than 2 hours. So yes, there are 3 or 4 other topics that he's talking about within this podcast, right? Or in his Hate Live or whatever. But the T Carter part is like 40 fucking minutes. So we did kind of exploit our friend for profit. Our dead friend for profit. Even though over the years that sentiment has changed a little bit in the fact of him, from him being a friend, right? His best friend, if you will, to end up being a rival, being a mentor. Like, he's gone through the gamut with the gambit really, with T Carter and what his value was to him. The first part, the first video I ever saw of Phil's that he talked about T Carter, something very distinct that he said that stuck out to me, that never sat right with me, was if T Carter had lived, he would probably be Phil, meaning Phil. If T Carter had lived, Phil himself would probably be one of the best Street Fighter players out there. And I found that to be a very disgusting thing, that you needed someone else to rise to the occasion when allegedly you got into tournament play because of T. And when T passed away, you decided as a tribute to him to go out there through the tournament circuit and show that you could actually overcome, because that's what T instilled into you. Semantics, I suppose. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and get into the video itself. I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing me ramble, despite the fact that there's going to be a whole lot more of that as the video goes on. I hope you guys are doing well, and see you guys in just a second.
You good if you know me.
Around, why don't you come around? Why don't you anything you want to sing about? Just sing it all out now, sing it all out. Let the world know what life's all about. Come around, why don't you come around? Why don't you come around? Why don't you come around? Come around, why don't you come around? Why don't you sing about a melody? Come around, why don't you come around? Why don't you come around? Why don't you come around? Around, why don't you come around? Why don't you let the world know what life's all about? Come around, why don't you come around? Why don't you come around? Why don't you come around?
Okay. The Man of Orange tipped me $2. Said, is it usual criticism that your winning EVO was not authentic because it was a Neo Geo port valid or stupid? It wasn't a Neo Geo port. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Super Turbo, I don't think was ever even on Neo Geo, because Neo Geo is an SNK console. Why would a Capcom game be on it? No, the port was a PS1 port. And at the time, it was the only mainstream console version outside of Dreamcast, but they didn't want to use Dreamcast because they felt that the Dreamcast was the no reliable console at the time.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here with MrHuth stuff. DSPGaming, 4th place legacy. This is from January 9th of 2021. The link without my annoying voice will be down in the description. Where do we start? First things first. The whole gist, if you will, or the whole slap, actually the slap is probably better. The whole slap about it being a Neo Geo port, that is the Mike Watson comment that he continues to sidestep. You would think after all these years, right? And if, according to what Phil said, according to Pig Lore, Mike Watson reached out to him after making that comment. The comment was made in 2010, I believe. It was at like it was either a North Cal or a South Cal regionals. I think it's a Seoul Cal regional. Sorry. He said that after that, Mike Watson allegedly reached out to him and apologized for the comment, so on and so forth, despite the fact there's no actual proof of any of that at all. But whatever, you know, when Phil debunks anything, the only evidence is his word, his snorts, if you will, of truth, and take that for what you will. So the fact that he's not man enough to say anything about that is still rather telling, even to this day. As for the Neo Geo, or sorry, not Neo Geo, that's the funny part. As for the Dreamcast port, or people not wanting to use Dreamcast because they felt it was an unreliable port, that kind of, or a lot of you pointed that out in the last video, that was kind of bullshit, being that just about every FGC game or fighting game on the Dreamcast was the closest thing to arcade perfect that they could get their hands on. Then again, as we also talked about, the Dreamcast is, especially older ones, can be a bit sensitive, and certain little bumps and stuff like that can completely reset a game. That becomes problematic, but that's still few and far between. But it's fair to put that out there for the sake of argument. Excuse me. I'll go ahead and play this from the beginning, which is only like 30 seconds, and then we'll start the ball fresh. Here we go.
Okay. The Man of Orange tipped me $2, said, is a usual criticism that your winning EVO was not authentic because it was a Neo Geo port valid or stupid? It wasn't a Neo Geo port. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Super Turbo, I don't think was ever even on Neo Geo because Neo Geo is an SNK console. Why would a Capcom game be on it? No, the port was a PS1 port. And at the time, it was the only mainstream console version outside of Dreamcast, but they didn't want to use Dreamcast because they felt that the Dreamcast was the non-reliable console at the time. So after about 2 more months of that, I basically told them to go fuck themselves, and I was going to quit the job. The problem was, I had moved out of my parents.
Now, this right here is actually kind of interesting, and that bleeds over to what I'm doing on the Fight Club channel a little bit. So the job that Phil's talking about apparently is when he was working at a bank or some type of financial institution where they were sending out predatory loans, or they were giving out predatory loans, and so on and so forth. So Phil fit right in. But it's even funnier that you have someone who allegedly his job was to give out loans to people who they knew who couldn't pay. And yet Phil himself became susceptible to the same damn thing only a few years later when he bought his condo. I always thought that was absolutely fascinating. But let's continue.
Place and was living in an apartment with 2 other people who also worked at Wells Fargo Financial, and I wasn't going to have any significant income. And EVO was coming up. This was the summer when I had actually gotten out of the job in late June, and I believe EVO was in July of this year. And before I had gotten out of this Wells Fargo Financial job, had already bought tickets to go to EVO. I already had bought all the tickets.
Real quick, supposedly an aspect of the Wells Fargo story, the reason why he says he left, he more than likely got fired, was there was some female teller there, or there was some female assistant there that he liked, and she was essentially sleeping her way up or whatever, and Phil kind of didn't like that, because, you know, Phil doesn't like people having unfair advantages or whatever, and so he reported them to an upper, like their superior, if you will, and the guy sided with the other two, because they weren't doing anything wrong, and Phil's just running around basically tattling like a little bitch. And one thing led to another, and then eventually he got pushed out. That's kind of the long and short of it. Eventually, I'll find the video where he actually talked about that, because he's talked about it's in an Ask the King, it's in a Hate Live, it's in something. When I come across it, we'll tie this all back together and you guys can see what I'm talking about. But it was stupid. He should have just kept his fucking mouth shut. And let's say, for the sake of argument, that hypothetical Pignosis, our favorite game, let's say that he did just out and out quit. You're getting ready the next month, right, to go on vacation so you can go to EVO, right? All this money that you've already committed to going on this trip. You're going to quit your job over some petty shit, knowing damn well that you're living with 2 other dudes, right? You're kind of putting them in a problem, because if you can't come up with their rent, they're going to have to come up with the extra to kind of try to help you out, you know what I'm saying? So on and so forth. You're putting all these people at deficit because you couldn't get with some chick, and you thought, oh, well, I'm going to show my defiance by quitting, if that was allegedly the case, of course. You see how stupid this individual is? And it's this type of financial irresponsibility and his his lack of mental stability in a lot of ways is one of the reasons why he's in the trouble that he's in now. and one of the reasons why he cuts himself off from the world the way he does. The less people Phil has to interact with, the better. And the people that he does interact with, he needs to have full control over it. I'm sure a lot of you guys see that as of late with that whole nonsense where you guys can't talk to each other in the chat unless you're talking about me or you're talking about the game, which is, he sounds like he's unhinged more so than usual. And it's been like this, to be honest with you, ever since LSB's cult video came out. Phil has been going off the goddamn rails. I'm gonna need to go over there and watch it. Because Phil obviously have seen it multiple times and it's not sitting well with him. And you see a lot of that nonsense bleed over into what he's saying on Twitter as well, to some degree.
Like, everything was arranged already. The hotel was reserved. The tickets were purchased. But I didn't have any money to spend on this trip because I didn't have a job now. I was out of the job for like a month. So I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I could cancel the trip, but I'm not going to get any of my money back for the hotel or the tickets. If the tickets, the most I could get a credit. But being that I don't know if I'm even going to have a job, what do I do, right? So, on a whim, and this is the worst possible thing anyone can do, and I'll tell you right now, don't do it ever. I went with my credit card, my big-ass credit card, but back then they gave credit cards to everyone. It's not like today where they're very selective with who gets credit. Back then, anyone got a giant credit card. And I went to the bank, and I did a cash advance on my credit card for like $3,000.
Okay, I'm going to bring that back. But we're not going to talk about it just yet. I'm just going to bring it back. A couple of reasons. One. This is going to be good. One. I don't have a job. Okay? I don't have a job. He was out of the job for about a month or whatever the case may be. And he's got this big trip coming up, but I can't go because I don't have a job and I don't know how I'm going to cover these bills, right? But I still want to go on this trip, even though I have nothing really put together for myself when I get back. I'm broke. That's basically what he's saying. He's saying he was working a full-time job, but he was broke. Instead of figuring out how we're going to cover bills until we get a new job, I got to figure out how I need to go on this trip. I need to figure out how to do that. So we're going to go to Old Faithful, the most reliable snort of all snorts, credit cards. Now, this goes back to this walking ATM thing I've told you guys about that they refer to Phil in the FGC, because that's what he was. This idiot doesn't know how he's going to be able to pay his bills the next month until he gets another job. But he was okay with going to the bank and taking a cash advance of $3,000 to go on this trip. Now, here's another thing. He's saying that he took the cash advance out, right, to cover his tickets, to cover the hotel, and cover his entry fee, right? Here's the thing, and I know you guys already know this. He already put all of that on a credit card anyway. That's how he was able to reserve all of it in the first place. So he went and got this cash advance to get $3,000 out so he could have gambling/spending money when he goes to EVO. Do you guys understand now why people call him the walking ATM? Because he's a fucking idiot. A degenerate gambler to the worst possible fucking degree. And if any of you guys know anything about Phil's tournament lore, whenever he goes to a major tournament, he's probably been talking shit to at least 5 to 10 people. That shit talking doesn't only potentially turn into him getting his ass whooped, but really it just goes into big money matches. Usually East Coast versus West Coast type money matches. They bled him. And why did they bleed him, ladies and gentlemen? Because he bled himself. This stupid son of a bitch bled himself. Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Oh, it's beautiful. But let's listen to it again. Oh boy. But yet again, just to recap. I left / got fired from this job. I don't have any money. I've already committed to going to EVO. If I do cancel everything, I can't guarantee I'm going to get all my money back. Or if I do, I'll just only get credit or whatever the case may be. And it'll be another month until I get another job, which at that time he didn't necessarily know that unless he already went begging to his father to get him into the helicopter company, which he might have. And yet, instead of doing what we need to do as a responsible, mature adult, We did what we chose. We did what we wanted to do as a child, and further sunk ourselves into debt. That same debt, ladies and gentlemen, I told you guys about, that he sunk himself in for the FGC. I'm telling you, he sunk tens of thousands of dollars chasing clout, chasing respect, and chasing an EVO championship win. And he never got it. And he had to use YouTube to bail him out of that. Oh. It's terrible. But it's so amusing. It really is.
So, on a whim, and this is the worst possible thing anyone can do, and I'll tell you right now, don't do it ever. I went with my credit card, my big-ass credit card, but back then they gave credit cards to everyone. It's not like today where they're very selective with who gets credit. Back then, anyone got a giant credit card. And I went to the bank, and I did a cash advance on my credit card for like $3,000.
Oh, and then the idiot blames the bank for giving him the high balance credit cards, right? For him to take the cash advance out. Isn't that beautiful? Well, dudes, if I had a reasonable credit line, I wouldn't have went over there and took out $3,000 to go to EVO. Maybe I wouldn't have gone to EVO at all. But since they gave me this big ass balance on this credit card, well, what did you expect me to do, dude? I still need my EVO win. I still need to prove to not only the East Coast, but to the West Coast, right? And to EVO staff that's been fucking me from the beginning, apparently. You'll hear a little bit about that as we go along, that I really am the best. You know what I mean? And my EVO 2005 win wasn't a fluke, and my dominant sorry, I can't say that without a chuckle. His domination of the Super Turbo scene in 2006 was the real deal. And they really did hold him back, and they really did fuck him over. You'll see more about what I'm talking about as we go along. Bask in it.
It was that bad because I was paying like 27% interest rate on it for like the next year. But I digress. I took out like a ton of money so that I knew I could pay for the hotel, I could pay for, you know, the entrance to the tournament, I could pay for the food all week, because in Vegas, food is not cheap. I could pay for anything that I needed when I was out there, all right?
Now, he lied to you there, and I just told you why. The flight was already squared away. Hotel was already squared away, and his entry fee was already squared away, because I think at this time, you could pay for your EVO entry by credit card over their website. So really all he needed was spending money, food, all that stuff is reasonable, you know, and other peripherals that he may or may not need, toiletries and shit like that the hotel wasn't going to give him. But he already told you that he had already had all that stuff on reserve. And obviously he would have had to put all that on a credit card to have that reserved. It's all in the small snorts, ladies and gentlemen. It's all in the small snorts.
I flew out there to EVO. Now, here's the thing. So, which it wasn't. They ended up using Dreamcast for Marvel 2 anyway. But, no, they used the PS1 version. And was it illegitimate? No. What it was different. It had different things to it that if you practiced it, you would have learned the differences. That's exactly what I did. Everyone was complaining, we want arcade. I complained that year, too, that I wanted arcade. I publicly said on srk.com, shoryuken.com, I think that it should be arcade version. But EVO outright denied it and said over and over, no, we're doing PS1 version. Everyone said, well, that's fucking stupid. I agreed. And I said, but you know what? Instead of sitting here and bitching, I'm going to actually play that version and learn it and then play it in the tournament. So I did. I played
and
the
really
shit
what
out of
that was just a retarded wolf in sheep's clothing. Yeah, he's sitting there bitching and complaining, oh, we want arcade cabinets, we want arcade cabinets. But the more he's seeing people say, oh, well, I'm not going to go to this tournament, or I'm not going to play in that tournament seriously, or I don't really give a shit, whatever, I'll focus on another game. And he's seeing that the flock, the strong, right, are starting to weave out. And he's looking at everybody else who's still sitting there. He's believing, oh shit, I got a chance. I got a real chance. And I'm going to grind this shit the fuck out. Now, I think it's Phil's fault, really. That the misconception is that Phil only had a couple of days to grind this out before the actual tournament. But that wasn't the case. He admitted that he actually had the game far in advance. And he was already playing and grinding it out. And then he spent another 2 or 3 days while he was at the tournament trying to get all the nuances and everything down. So then when the tournament actually happened, he would have advantage. So it wasn't like, you know, the game came out at the very, 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 very last minute. You only had a couple days to grind. Phil has admitted that he had a lot of time to do so. Let's continue.
Version both at home, and then when I went to the tournament for like 2-3 straight days, I just practiced the PS1 version. So when they actually got to the
it was actually right there. I should have shut the fuck up. Let me go ahead and bring that back. He just said I had it at home, and then I grinded it out for a couple of days when I got there. But like I said, let me shut the fuck up. Let you guys hear that.
No, we're doing PS1 version. Everyone said, well, that's fucking stupid. I agreed. And I said, but you know what? Instead of sitting here and bitching, I'm going to actually play that version and learn it and then play it in the tournament. So I did. I played the shit out of that version both at home, and then when I went to the tournament for like 2-3 straight days, I just practiced the PS1 version. So when I actually got to the competitive play, I knew the differences. I knew Vega was even better. I knew Chun-Li was even better. And I also knew that certain characters like Balrog and Old Sagat were not as good in that version. So I
played the shit out that game while I was at home. I played the shit out of it. Just throwing it out there. It's all in the little snorts.
Played those characters like Vega and did insanely well, while other people didn't practice, just sat there and whined and didn't enter at all, or just complained and never practiced, and they all lost. But the two games that I had been playing primarily and doing well in were Marvel vs. Capcom 2. This is a game that I had played at a pro level since the game had ever released in the late 90s. It was like, I think, 1999-2000 when it came out. And I've been playing it for 4 or 5 years. I've been traveling the country. I've been to tournaments like Texas Showdown and Final Round playing this game. Now, I never was top level. That was the game that I was primarily focusing on for that EVO. I really wanted to do well at EVO in Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Now, I had been playing
you would never, like that's another thing, too, that needs to be just pushed off the goddamn board. He was never nothing for nothing in Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Ever. He was definitely not in the top 3. He was definitely never in the top 8. I go as far as saying he wasn't even in probably the top 24 or 36 as it pertains to competitive players, right? Or certainly tournament worthy contenders. Let's not say tournament worthy, because just about anybody can be tournament worthy. And when it comes to contenders, you know what I'm saying, or top competitors in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, he was never in the top. I wouldn't even put him in the top 36. Ever. I don't even know why he keeps propagating that bullshit. And if any of you guys know, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, back in the day, back in Phil's day, was thick. It was thick. Like, it was really, really bad. Like, you had to be somebody special. Not special in the way Phil is, you know, and Sidella type shit. I mean, you had to be really special. You had to be talented. You know what I'm saying? You have to be gifted in some ways to be able to get into to break into the top 36, certainly into the top 20 in the country. And Phil was nowhere near that. He was a good ATM though. He was a nice little way of having $700,000 money matches, race to 10. He ain't lost plenty of them. So I don't know if that considers you a top player, if you being a walking ATM for people. Maybe that's what they told him to keep him playing. I don't know. But he was never nothing about nothing when it came to Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Never in his life. Not in his wildest snorts he was ever anything. And don't let him tell you differently.
Fighter 2 Turbo. In fact, usually when I was at a tournament, say at this arcade called 8 on the Break in New Jersey, this was the arcade where the East Coast Championships was held, and they held all regionals and stuff. Whenever I went to a tournament for Marvel vs. Capcom 2, I would also play in Super Turbo, and recently I had actually found myself placing highly in these tournaments, like top 5. Now, I didn't even really play that game that much. I only played it at tournaments. Yeah, I was learning the game on the fly. I was adapting, and I was actually fighting players who had played this game for like decades, and I was winning. I was beating them. And it was pretty crazy.
Okay, hold up. I wasn't trying, right? But I found myself in the top 5. He really did try, and try to game the system too, by the way. But he really did try, and still only made it to 4th. On the biggest stage possible for a bullshit port for a tournament that was already boycotted and diluted anyway. He still only was able to make 4th. He was able to progress one more placing. It would be absolutely beautiful if it wasn't so tragic. That's amazing. And look at how excited he looks. Look at him. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the face of accomplishment. I know you guys don't see that really anymore, but that's what that is. For Phil, literally astounded, amazed, if you will, enamored with his own greatness, reminiscing about it. He's having a piggy orgasm. Take it all in.
How good I was doing in Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. A lot of people were actually calling me like the prodigy. I was this East Coast prodigy in that game that I was learning, and it was hilarious because, you know, at that point I was in my my early to mid 20s, and people had said, well, you need to be like 30 years old to be good at Super Turbo. That was like the running joke. When I was 18, well, you got to be like drinking age to be good at Super Turbo. Then when I was drinking age, well, you got to be like your late 20s. When I was late 20s, oh, you got to be like in your 30s. That's always the joke. You're never old enough to be good at Super Turbo. But I was like the younger
here's
guy.
The thing. Phil was born in 82. Justin was born in 87. And Justin was placing high in Super Turbo. And if you really were to look at them side by side and look at what they had obtained, and you try to associate the term prodigy, it would go to Justin without a doubt. So how the fuck are you the East Coast prodigy, this young dude who came out of nowhere that shouldn't have any of these abilities to do what you're doing, when Justin was there and in the thick of it, as well as others who were around Justin's age? Even though, if I remember correctly, outside of maybe Sanford Kelly, who is really only known for, well, not only known, but he's mainly known for Marvel vs. Capcom 2. He has a team actually named after him, Santhrax. And he had a really good run in Street Fighter 4 as well. Those two would probably have been considered the youngest. So how does this goof end up being the child prodigy of the East Coast? How does that work? Whatever. Maybe that's me just being spiteful. I don't know. Me being a hater.
He was really good at the game. So that was like the secondary game that I had wanted to play at EVO. All right. And at this point, surprisingly enough, I didn't have any beef with anyone. It wasn't like I was going out there and someone wanted to beat my ass or I wanted to beat someone's ass. So as soon as I got out there, I started playing Super Turbo. And I found that there was a cabinet, a custom-built cabinet by this guy who was a known Super Turbo player from the Midwest named Cigar Bob, because he liked to smoke little blunts and cigars and stuff like that. It was awesome. He had taken the console version of Super Turbo as well as the arcade version, so he had both versions. And he had it hooked up to this custom cabinet where he had two TVs back to back. But keep in mind, this was before the era of the LCDs. They were still big tube TVs hooked into this giant wooden thing he had built with these built-in joysticks, right? Now this was cool. He had the American style stick, but you could pop it out and put down a Japanese style stick. So no matter what kind of joystick you liked, you could play on his cabinet and it would work, and the controls were great. And we were playing Super Turbo the entire tournament, basically. I showed up a few days early and helped them set up and everything. And the next thing you know, I was helping them. I was playing Super Turbo like crazy, casual against everyone. Now, here's the thing that the top players will not really admit to or really fess up to. Here's the deal.
Now, here's the thing.
Never been...
Yet again, we supposedly, we don't have any money whatsoever. Essentially, this whole trip is funded off credit cards and cash advances. And yet, he still had time to go out there 2 or 3 days before the actual tournament started. And I think EVO back then was either Saturday, Sunday, or it may have extended to a 3-day tournament of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. He still found time to fly out there damn near a week early. To try to prep and try to show how useful he is, and then just try to grind the game out to, you know what I'm saying, to win that EVO. Think about all the preparation, or lack thereof, of proper preparation, if you will, that's going into all of this. And you're starting to see, or I'd like for you, hopefully, to be able to see why he holds on. Why he holds on to that 4th place finish. Because think about everything he quote unquote put into it, if that makes sense.
A perfect port of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. There's been versions of it on the PlayStation, versions of it on the PlayStation 2, versions of it on modern consoles. There's been versions of it for the arcade, which is the perfect version, because that's the one everyone holds up as that's the perfect one. And then there's even the emulated version on PC. But no matter what version you play, people all say there's differences from the original arcade version, so none of them are true, okay? None of them are like the full-on version. For whatever reason, EVO decided in that year, 2005, I believe it was, to use the PlayStation 1 version of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which was very inferior to the arcade version. The sprites for the characters weren't even the right size. Like, they weren't scaled properly. In that version, Balrog was actually smaller than he was in the actual arcade version, and some characters were faster or had different properties. I remember in that version, for some reason, Chun-Li was incredibly good. Like, she could hit you twice and dizzy you. And people would be like, why is she dizzying so quickly? This doesn't happen in the arcade version. But that was the version they chose for EVO that year. All right?
Wait. I thought you said that the version that they chose for EVO wasn't invalid. It was different. I thought that's what you said. But you're admitting here now, I don't know, the same shit I said in my first video, that there was damage inconsistencies and there was all types of other problems that went along with it. The same thing that the OGs had said years before. But now you're okay with admitting that, oh, it has some problems with the sprite, game speeds were off. That was a big thing that was pointed out. Damage outputs were inconsistent. But yet again, you see how he shields himself, snort. He shields himself with the fact that, oh, well, that's what they picked. That's the version that was being played that year. So, sorry, dude. It is what it is. You guys are you guys starting to catch on to the progression and what he was planning that year and what he was hoping to achieve? He, believe it or not, this lazy fuck put in a lot, hoping that he could secure this win, and he still failed, which makes it hilarious. And I understand, because a few people have pointed this out, that yes, him gloating about 4th place is sad, but it's not pathetic. In any other case, you'd be absolutely right. You'd be absolutely right. But the way he holds on to 4th place is pathetic. So let me reaffirm my standings. 4th place isn't pathetic. How Darksydephil, DSP, Phil Burnell, Dark Geppetto, Darkside Karen, and every other little buzzword that I like to throw outside of that. Darkside Pill, whatever the case may be. The emphasis that he puts on it is pathetic. The fact that he had stood on that shit for 15, 16 years, the fact that he held on to that shit for that long, and demanded respect for it is pathetic. So you know what I'm saying? Let me reaffirm my standings on that. That is pathetic, though. You know what I'm saying? 4th place, there's no shame in getting 4th. But to gloat about it and to demand to be glorified for it is very pathetic, I think. I know. I know it's pathetic. Just saying. He should have just taken his participation trophy and taken his snorts and walked home. That's what he should have done. In actuality, he shouldn't have gone out there in the first place. He should have handled his responsibilities at home. Instead of running around for fucking internet clout. But, yet again, when you become EVO champion, you're put into the books. You are, for all intents and purposes, in esports history, if you will. Look at everything he tried to do to obtain it, and he still failed. Let's continue.
Got to EVO for the first 2 days before the tournament started. I played hardcore on this Cigar Bob homemade cabinet on that version of the game. And we played it like crazy. I mean, I'm talking, I went down there in the morning, started playing, and didn't leave till late at night. So we're talking 12 plus hours of playing Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo like crazy, right? Now, the controversy at EVO was that they had chosen this particular console version of the game for the tournament. And a lot of the top players were so angry because they wanted the arcade version. EVO said, no, this year it's an all-console tournament. We're not shipping in any more cabinets or whatever, so you're not getting your arcade perfect version. You either play this version on console or just don't come. Well, a couple people didn't come, like Alex Valle boycotted EVO and said, I'm not coming to EVO this year then because I don't want to play a subpar version of the game. Other players, such as John Choi, Mike Watts...
Let's actually correct that. He said that he wasn't going to... He at first said he wasn't coming. Then he said he would show up to gatekeep the tournament, and he had work obligations, so Uncle Valle couldn't show up. And then he eventually showed up later that night for a unofficial Super Turbo tournament, which he should be talking about more about that as we go along.
Jason Wilson and a few others who were known top Super Turbo players in the country, they came, but they were begrudgingly there. They didn't want to play any casuals against anyone. They were there just to dominate in the tournament and leave. So for 2 straight days, I practiced.
They weren't taking it seriously. They were just gonna have a good time with it. A lot of these dudes were in other little side tournaments or in other shit too, and whatnot. Why the fuck would Phil want to play casuals with any of them anyway? They would more than likely stomp him in casuals. And if you try to use some piggy logic here, and I know none of us do that because we're not pigs, but I'll be the sacrifice in this. Why would I want to have casuals in this inferior port with someone like John Choi or NKI or any of those, or Bucktooth or any of those dudes who are actually really smart dudes, and they pick up on what the fuck I'm doing, and they're picking up some of these nuances, right? And then end up using that against me later. Why would I want to do that? I want you to really think about this. And if you go ahead and apply that logic to what the Japanese end up doing to his ass later on in the tournament, it was probably a godsend that they weren't playing casuals, if that's even true. If that's even true. So just something to think about.
Living shit out of this version of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and I learned the nuances and the differences between this version and the one of the arcades. I learned that Chun-Li was overpowered, that Vega was incredibly good in this one, that Balrog actually wasn't as good in this version as he was in the real arcade version. So I learned all these things while I was playing. And oh, by the way, a character that everyone loved to use, old
He tried to change the story mid. It's crazy how he's trying to change his story mid-story. He just told us that he grinded the game before he went to EVO. And then in the apparent week ahead of time, while he was there, or a few days that almost amounted to a week, he grinded the game out there. Now he's trying to say that, oh, while I was playing out there, that's when I discovered all the nuances and all the little differences. Did anybody catch that? I'm sure you guys did. But it's you guys you have to pay attention to the small snorts of it all. Because he will slip that shit in. Like in some broke man Jedi mind trick type shit.
Older version of Sagat, in this version of Super Turbo, he did like extra damage, but he also had less reach. So I learned all these things while playing casual play. And basically it came down to top 8 were 3 Japanese players, alright, and 5 Americans. But the way that the brackets were split up was that the Americans actually ended up eliminating themselves or being eliminated by the Japanese before they got to the finals. So, like, John Choi ended up getting eliminated, and someone else ended up getting eliminated. So, the battle for the top of this entire tournament, okay, ended up being me against NKI, alright? The winner of that advanced to fight Tokido, and the winner of that would move on to face the top 2, and that would be the tournament. Like, that was the tournament. The people who I'd been hanging out with playing Marvel 2, like Isaac Graham and those other kids, the qualifiers, were cheering for me, and they were the only ones in the entire audience cheering for me. Everyone else was just like quiet, deadly silent that I was beating everyone at this tournament. They didn't want to hear about it. But I was out playing everyone with strategies.
Listen to the delusion here. So the guys I was hanging with were obviously cheering me on because they love me and everything, and that's why they're my fans. But the rest of the auditorium, right? The rest of this ballroom was dead silent. All the pro players were on their phones with Valle being like, "When the fuck are you gonna get here, man? We gotta get out. We gotta get Phil out of here. He's getting his head blown up." Really? Really? No. I don't see any reason why anybody would cheer him. But at the end of the day, if it's America versus Japan. Excuse me, if it's America versus Japan, Americans are going to usually cheer for Americans. It is what it is. So, no, I don't believe that. I don't believe that either. That sounds like absolute bullshit. But then again, for Phil to be, I've had this conversation with Declan Reed a handful of times. Big ups to Declan Reed. I hope you're doing all right, man. And either once I'm back on Twitter, I'll reach out to you. He always tries to paint himself as the tragic hero with the cracked shield, the broken sword, back against the cliff and shit, and a pending death if he takes another step back, and the whole fucking world needs to be against him. He always paints these scenarios, and it's pathetic. It's pathetic to listen to. Well, even though I'm still going to listen to it, so I guess that makes me pathetic too. But it's it's really sad to listen to that you would overinflate your own self-worth like this to people who don't give a shit except for assholes like myself. Like you know what I'm saying? Like, why? Like, why? And remember, this is done in a private video. This variation, this version of the DSP lore story of when it comes to EVO of that year is not anywhere else that I've been able to find so far. Even his EVO story, the year that he ended up getting confronted by Jaha, he doesn't even mention it. So this right here is something exclusive, hot off the presses. You know what I'm saying? For your snort eyes only, for this individual, and that's it. This story has not been replicated anywhere else. So keep that in mind.
You know, footsies, anti-airs, like just perfectly played, because I had played this version of Super Turbo for like 2 to 3 days hardcore and learned all the nuances and was ready for the tournament. On top of the time
that you spent at home grinding it out as well. Let's not forget that.
All the other top Super Turbo players either complained about the game nonstop and didn't even enter the tournament, or they entered and they didn't practice on this version and they got completely destroyed and thrown out of the tournament during the qualifying rounds. So it was me against NKI, close fight. I ended up beating NKI, went down to the wire, I had to play Tokido, and went down to like the final match. He beat me, and that was it. So I was the top placing American that year. It was actually 3 Japanese players above me, and then I was right under there. So I was 4th place, but I was the top placing American in Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo that year. So technically I was the best ranked Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo player that year.
I'm gonna bring that back because it's so sad to hear him say that. It's funny. For my personal enjoyment, it's fucking hilarious, but it's so sad to listen to him say that. Now here's the irony of it all. He spammed as it's cemented, ladies and gentlemen, that he had the game at home. He was grinding the game out. Goes out to this tournament 3 or 4 days in advance before the tournament even starts, grinds the game out while he's there. Now he supposedly knows all the little glitches, all the little nuances, all the changes, right? You know what I'm saying? All the differences, if you will. When a bunch of players who either didn't want to learn, because they all had the opportunity to get their hands on this version of the game too, and they didn't do it. And they didn't have to if they didn't want to, it's whatever. But they had the same advantages Phil did. But they chose not to. So Phil had all these advantages over them, and he more than likely had the advantage over these 3 Japanese players. And yet, his own spam tactics that he was going to use to win this tournament ended up getting turned around on him by those 3 Japanese players. Isn't that shit incredible? But not just that. They were just smarter players. They were more skilled players. You know what I'm saying? They were better rounded players. They didn't have to rely on gimmicks. They were able to survive, adapt, and overcome all on the fly. And they beat him at his own game. That, ladies and gentlemen, should be the true legacy of, it should be the true legacy of Darksydephil's FGC/EVO history. But, you know, whatever.
Placing American that year, it was actually 3 Japanese players above me, and then I was right under there. So I was 4th place, but I was the top placing American in Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo that year. So technically I was the best ranked Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo player that year.
1, fight!
God damn! God damn! Phil! You let him straight up manhandle you. This isn't WWE Champions. This isn't some sweaty JPEG dude that you fantasize about at night after Kat goes to bed. Or while she's still at the gym with Jim. Not that I know anything about that. But it's not any of that. God damn. And Tokido's shorter than you too. Yikes! Came in here and manhandle the fuck out you. Ugh. Let's see round 2 though. Phil has no footsie game whatsoever. At least right here he don't. His only real approach on the ground is his ground slide. That's it. He doesn't have. I'm not seeing anything else that he's using to get in but that slide. Hoping that he can use the priority at the end of Vega's foot to go ahead and basically disrupt anything that's being thrown out. Other than that, I'm not catching none of that. He doesn't have a shimmy. He doesn't have nothing. And he's too scared to approach him in the air, too. Wow. Okay, let's continue. Sorry about that. I should have waited till the match was over. Now, another thing that's interesting is he he took a lot of damage for no reason, to be honest. But you saw how he only really started to get aggressive on Tokido when he saw that he had more life than Tokido. Then he was willing to take some more risks. Then he was willing to try to get in there and engage. Other than that, he was trying to, I guess you could try to say, he was trying to be slow and methodical, but without any footsie game and without anything to keep Tokido grounded. I mean, he could have easily have lost his round. He could have very easily have lost his round. Yikes! But this right here is Phil dominating, right? Dominating.
Round 3, fight!
Oh my God! You see how that happened? Tokido switched up and used the kickflip as an anti-air, and then also used it as a way to keep him pressured on the ground. God damn, dude! But yet again, surviving, adapting, and overcoming. Oh, and the thing is too is back in Phil's day, as they do now, and honestly, you use the first round as a feeling out process, and then you start implementing you kind of develop your strategy, right? And you start training people or regimenting people into certain things that first round. And then second round, you know what I'm saying? Especially, and if you win that first round, second round, you go ahead and you try some other things, you see what works and you see what don't. If you lose that second round, then you implement all the information that you have acquired in that third round. Tokido essentially did all of that. Yikes. Oh, absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Round 1, fight!
Now, in this right here, you saw Phil's desperation because he's down a match. So he needs to get back in and he needs to start making shit happen. And all he did was run into mistakes. He ran into mistakes. And Tokido saw it too. Jesus Christ, that's hurtful. I myself am a former pro fighting game player. Oh, wow. Phil, I almost feel sorry for you. Almost. Okay, I'm sorry. There was a mistake he made there. I won't bring it back because I'm not gonna sit there and try to. Shit, I kind of want to bring it back because he did fuck up. Like Phil fucked up, like really really bad. This could have gone a whole lot different if he. All right, this could have gone a whole lot differently. Give me a second. Round 2. Okay. It's Tokido with his quick flips. All right, hits him with that. Rolls right there.
3, fight!
Okay. He did a little bit better, but it was obviously he was trying to go for the super to finish, and it wasn't coming out. That seems pretty clear. That was a thing. On top of that, he also was trying to finish Tokido off the way Tokido finished him off in the first round. He tried to emulate it, and that didn't work either. This is just, to be honest, this was him getting in his own way. Granted, Tokido was going to win this regardless. I don't have there's not a Snort's chance in hell that Tokido was going to lose this. But Phil got in his own way. The way I see it. He got in his own way. Yikes. Wow.
So if you say that's unfair or it's not legit, I mean, they announced way ahead of time, this is the version that's going to be at EVO. Yes, people complain, but you had plenty of time to practice that version. You know what I mean? That would be like saying, okay, we're going to have an NBA 2K tournament, but we're playing the Xbox version at the tournament. But you scream and complain, well, the PlayStation version is the official version, it's the better version, but the tournament says, well, we're playing on an Xbox. So you don't practice the Xbox version, you don't realize maybe the timing's a little different, or there's some slight nuance that's different, then you go and play in the tournament and lose and you complain about it. Oh, it's illegitimate. It's like, but you knew you were entering an Xbox tournament. So why did you not prepare for it? That's exactly what happened at that tournament. But no one wanted to acknowledge it. As soon as immediately after the tournament ended, I shit you not, it was like, write this off, it doesn't count, even though it'll be on paper that he qualified, or that he beat this guy and that guy, and then on paper, he made it to the finals and he's the highest ranked American. Doesn't count, because that was a bad version of Super Turbo, and we're just going to wipe that dirty taste out of our mouth. In fact, it was so bad, Alex Valle, who didn't even participate in the tournament, shows up at EVO at night. Oh, well, since that tournament didn't count, now we'll have the real tournament. And what they did is they converted Cigar Bob's cabinet from the console version of Super Turbo to the arcade version of Super Turbo. And we all played that night in the hotel room, okay? Now, here's the thing. The young players like me, like Cigar Bob, like other people who've been playing this game hardcore, we've been playing on the console version of the game. We've been playing it hardcore for 3 days. We were exhausted. But the OGs, right, the original Super Turbo players wanted us, oh, you guys did so well in the tournament, huh? You got to play us now because we're going to show you we're the real top-level players in Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and you're not, right? I was like, well, how does that make sense?
They didn't force you to doing jack shit because it was Cigar Bob's setup, basically. So obviously he agreed with it, hence the reason why he was there. Hence the reason why he allowed them to play on it. If he didn't want to play, or if he was so tired, he wouldn't have let them do it. Two, why the fuck did you show up if you were so tired? I understand you trying to go ahead and cloak yourself, shield yourself behind all the other young players in air quotes, because you guys were so exhausted after 3 days playing in this tournament. But if you didn't want to play, then why didn't you? You should have been like, nah, I'm good. It is what it is. What do you care what people have to say about you? Remember, 4th place finish, #1 ranked Super Turbo or North American player, lone American against 3 Japanese players. What do you give a shit about any of these dudes? Take it all in. Just saying. You would think for someone who's the realest guy and who will speak his mind and isn't scared of anybody, he seemed to have gotten bullied, air quotes, he seemed to have gotten bullied into this situation rather easily. Just saying. Another man is not going to impose his will on you for you to do something you don't want to do unless you're scared. Oh well.
We played for 3 days. We're exhausted. The tournament's over. We want to rest, but now you demand we play you. By the way, we're now playing a different version. We're not playing the console version that was at EVO. We're going to play the arcade version, which is different, right? Different nuances and changes, which we haven't played for 3 days.
So what? Is what they demanded. Whoa. So what? So, because you were playing this particular version for 3 days, for Phil it was really like a week plus, if not longer. Like I said, he's been grinding it out. Now that you guys have to go back to the regular version, you can't switch your brain back to playing the regular version of the game that you were already complaining about with the rest of the Super Turbo community, that we need to play the arcade perfect version. Now all of a sudden, in 3 days, you ain't lost to the Japanese. Now all of a sudden, they want to have a real tournament on the real version, and you don't want to play, or you can't play because there's too many differences, there's too many nuances. Really? But didn't you say that the pro players showed their inability to adapt to a situation because they were so used to playing the regular version, and now that they have to go to, this arcade port, you know what I'm saying? It shows what their merit is, but what's your merit? Like someone else sees the hypocrisy, right? Like how are you going to shit on other people for something that you do yourself? Oh, okay. Sure. They call him the king of snorts for a reason.
Had this tournament, like midnight tournament, and Alex Valle won the tournament, and I think John Choi got second or something like that. It was between them in the finals. It didn't matter. It wasn't for money or anything. It was just a bragging rights tournament. And so it's kind of an unwritten law or word that year, even though I was the highest ranked American player, it didn't matter, didn't count. In the real Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo tournament, it was John Choi and Alex Valle who were at the top, and everyone else. No, it's bullshit. What it is they're so fucking egotistical and cocky, these West Coast Super Turbo players, they can't accept a loss or defeat. And they were so angry that they had to play a different version of the game that year that they purposely didn't practice, right? So it would be their
His prejudice, and I'm that's not the term that I should be using, but I think you guys will understand the way I'm using it. His prejudice against these West Coast players is astounding, is absolutely astounding. And then the irony of it all is that he ends up moving over to the West Coast years later. Think about this for a minute. So supposedly these West Coast boys have been dicking you over in tournaments and won't acknowledge your greatness and doing all this shit for years and years and years. Your whole tournament Street Fighter run. But then the first chance you get to move up out of Connecticut, you move over to the West Coast, which is clearly more expensive than where you were living. For what? Like why? I want you to really think about that. Let that sink in for a minute. Because he looks at the West Coast boys that they only won because they had all the advantages. They had the better arcades. They had more arcades. They had more locals and whatnot. They had better tournaments, and that's the reason why they did so well. They had all the advantages that the East Coast guys didn't have. And then years later, he decides to move over to the West Coast. Just think about that.
Loss, which they were going to fucking lose anyway, because they probably hadn't been playing that version of the game and were going to get bodied by people who had, was that, well, our excuse is we don't like this version of the game, but we'll play the real version afterward. Sorry, I was not in top tournament form. You know, I've been playing non-stop, absolutely non-stop for 3 days. I was tired as fuck. But they had demanded my presence at this tournament because I had been the top American placer, and they didn't even want to talk to me. They just wanted to beat me in this game. And it was despicable, basically. It was, like, very disrespectful. 2006, they picked Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo Anniversary Edition. This was the version of the game.
So why did you go? Like, why did you... Oh, they demanded your press. So what? You don't give a fuck about none... All those West Coast boys are cheaters anyway, so why the fuck why would you care? Why did you even care to go? And then, if you guys have been listening to the Bumpkin interviews, it's Alphaism Radio, I believe. There's someone on Kiwi Farms actually found a snidbit where Bumpkin had gone against versus DSP, and Bumpkin points out very clearly that you were supposed to be the AE specialist, Anniversary Edition, which is what he's talking about now. We're talking about 2006 now. You're supposed to be the specialist. You're the one that's supposedly running around dominating all over the whole ST tournament scene, and yet you got beat by Tokido. So how does that make sense? How does that work? And Phil was like, oh, there was other pro players who got beat too. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about you. You're the one who went ahead and said that you were the specialist. So why'd you get beat by a scrub? Why are you even calling him a scrub if he beat other pro players? He's clearly not a scrub. Something to think about.
Where you have all the old school characters in it, all right? All the old versions. So, I won the East Coast qualifier for the fucking game, dominated, didn't even lose once, undefeated, won the entire thing super easily, okay? And then when I went to EVO, they put me against Alex Valle and fucking Tokido, the two top-ranked players of that game. They were actually the players who had won the most of that game in the entire country. They gave me them as my first two fucking matches. I'm not kidding. Like, I didn't play any scrubs or anything. They were my first two matches because they wanted me out of the tournament as soon as possible so that they could say that I was a fluke the year before. So,
Wait.
2006,
They didn't give me any scrubs or anything. Why did you need scrubs? You were dominating everything that year. You went undefeated, unbeaten. And you needed scrubs to do what? Build your confidence up? He said it, not me. He said that he needed, he wanted some scrubs. You know what I'm saying? Or what do they call them in the Call of Duty community? Some Timmy No Thumbs, or Day One Noobs, or Christmas Noobs. He wanted that in a tournament. In a tournament to determine the world's best. He wanted some scrubs. And he didn't get it. He had to play people of his caliber right off the bat or better. Oh, let's hear that again. Let's hear that again.
the most of that game in the entire country. They gave me them as my first two fucking matches. I'm not kidding. Like, I didn't play any scrubs or anything. They were my first two matches because they wanted me out of the tournament as soon as possible so that they could say that I was a fluke the year before. So 2006, I played my heart out. I won my own qualifier on the East Coast. Then I go to the West Coast. I get screwed by terrible brackets and was out of the tournament like super quick. So then in 2007, I said, fuck you. I'm still going to prove myself. Now I'm really going to prove myself because now you rolled me off in 2000.
So 2006 was supposed to be supposedly his most dominant year, right? Most dominant year. Apparently, went undefeated. They put him up against. They put him in a tournament. They rigged the tournament brackets. Apparently, put him up against Valle and Tokido off the bat. He gets bodied, right? And that was the end of his tournament season. He went undefeated that whole year, allegedly, or that whole tournament season. And you go up against two experienced players. They didn't give you no scrubs. You didn't get any warm-ups. You didn't get any freebies. And you just got beasted. Then how good were you? It's almost, ladies and gentlemen, like, I know this is going to sound crazy because I'm a hater, right? I'm just a filthy detractor. What the fuck do I know? But it's almost as if, I don't know, he was hot trash. That he was garbage. That the tournaments that he won weren't that really big of a deal, right? And he didn't have any measure of skill. He's sitting. The first thing he's complaining about is he didn't get no scrubs. like for whatever reason, Cat didn't warm up some Thanksgiving dinner or something, and he ended up having to place. He had to compete against players of his caliber or better, and he couldn't compete. So his dominant year going undefeated meant what exactly? It's almost as if, ladies and gentlemen, he wasn't as good as he says he was. It's almost, ladies and gentlemen, like some of the lies that I've pointed out so far only prove that he was overinflating his self-worth. And maybe, just maybe, he really wasn't worth a damn. And he was mediocre and average at best. As some people had said about him back then anyway. Defiant sniff. I don't know, though, but there's so much conspiracy going on, though. Like, supposedly the brackets at EVO were rigged to get him up and out the tournament right away. To continue to humiliate him from his fluke win. Sorry, not a win. His fluke fourth place finish from the year prior. But let's hear how 2007 went. Let's go ahead and get it all.
2005, you screwed me in 2006. Now I'm going to prove to you in 2007 that I'm no flash in the pan. If I could do well 3 years in a row, there's no way that you could talk shit about me and tell me that I'm no good, right? So in 2007, I won the East Coast qualifier. I was a top placer in the Midwest qualifier. I was a top placer in the Southern qualifier. I was a top 5 placer on the West Coast qualifier. I entered every qualifier, and I didn't have to. After I won the East Coast one, I already was in the finals at EVO. But I said, fuck you. I'm going to go to every tournament in every region and prove to you that I can qualify at every tournament I enter. And I did. That year, I did.
He wasn't in the finals. He was like in like top 30. It was like top. It was either top 64 or top 32. I don't think he was in. He wasn't in the. Obviously, you don't go directly into like top 8. It doesn't work that way. The highest they would have put him is like top 16. But he didn't go to the finals. So shut that shit up.
He's up their ass. I proved to all of them that I was good enough to be recognized as a top Super Turbo player. At the finals, the actual finals at EVO, they actually had me play against the guy who I had trained with the entire time at EVO. I'm not even kidding you. His name's Graham Wolf. I had met him at the West Coast qualifier. We had practiced together there. And then at EVO, we played together for like a day, and he was my first round match. And I'm like, they did it again. What they did, they asked around. They said, gee, who's Phil been playing with again so that this person would know his game plan and be able to get him out quick? Oh, Graham Wolf? Phil versus Graham Wolf first round. They did it on purpose. Every time I enter an EVO tournament, they do this. I'm not lying. They purposely fuck me. They've done it for years on end. They fucked me over. At B5, before it was called EVO, they entered me in against the person from Connecticut who I flew in with. Well, you two will eliminate each other off, so there's only one person from Connecticut in the top of this game. Now the thing is,
yo, how delusional can you be? He can't really believe that. Oh, I need to hear that again. I'm sorry. I need to hear that again. I need to hear the delusion again. There's no way he believes that. There's no way. There's no way you believe that. That these people conspired against you. I understand. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. I am one who is quick to point out his bullshit, his pignosis or whatever. That's what I do. I may not do it well, but that's what I do. And I've heard all the bitching and complaining that he does weekly in his Street Fighter tournaments and so on and so forth, or his Street Fighter streams or whatever. It is what it is. But this is IRL. This is real life. So he can't blame lag, right? He can't blame latency or any bullshit in the game. So now we have to insert the human element into it and say they conspired against him for multiple years. From B4 to EVO 2007, they conspired against him. This is really what we've come down to. Hold on, let me see where we're at with this.
Against the guy who I had trained with the entire time at EVO. I'm not even kidding you. His name's Graham Wolf. I had met him at the West. A little further.
I'm sorry. Okay, this is when he says, fuck you, I'm gonna triumph in yada yada yada. Triumphant snorts all around. There's no way that anybody of sound logic would believe this or would tell themselves this. That right there is a great screenshot, by the way. Especially with his blurred out hoof. This is good. This is real good. That's a really good screenshot. I like that. Anyway, is phantom hoof, if you will. There's just no way. There's no way that anybody is that delusional. There's no way that you would believe that wholeheartedly. There's no way that if you believe that wholeheartedly, and I mean Phil, DSP, Darksydephil, if you really believe that wholeheartedly, you've got real problems. But then that goes back to what I said, where no one hindered him or hurt him but himself. He got in his own way. He got in his own way. And this right here out and out proves it, to be honest. God damn. That's wild. That is really, really wild. So Phil talks all this bullshit all the time, Super Turbo, that if this was the actual game and if this was in IRL, right, and not online, I'd beasted most of these people. But clearly, he wouldn't. I wouldn't even give him a 50-50 chance. I would say it's probably closer. I'll give him 40-60, 40% in his favor. 40-60, even though I really want to lean more towards like 30-70. I'd give him a 30% chance that he could beat he could beat the competition that he meets online in IRL. 30%. I think 30% of the competition he could probably beat. I'm not willing to give him anything higher than that. He's got too many mental blocks and barriers to be able to play effectively. That's why he can't do commentary as he's playing. He can't multitask. He can't think and then articulate a thought. That's why when he has these excuses, it goes back to what Tevin and LSB like to call it, those pre-recorded or pre-loaded excuses. That's exactly what that shit is. Jesus Christ. This is a hell of a good screenshot, though. That's a real good screenshot.
And prove to you that I can qualify at every tournament I enter. And I did. That year, I did. In their face, up their ass, I proved to all of them that I was good enough to be recognized as a top Super Turbo player. At the finals, the actual finals at EVO, they actually had me play against the guy who I had trained with the entire time at EVO. I'm not even kidding you. His name's Graham Wolf. I had met him at the West Coast qualifier. We had practiced together there. And then at EVO, we played together for like a day. And he was my first round match. And I'm like, they did it again. What they did, they asked around. They said, gee, who's Phil been playing with again so that this person would know his game plan and be able to get him out quick? Oh, Graham Wolf? Phil versus Graham Wolf first round. They did it on purpose. Every time I enter an EVO tournament, they do this. I'm not lying. They purposely fuck me. They've done it for years on end. They fucked me over. At B5, before it was called EVO, they entered me in against the person from Connecticut who I flew in with. Well, you two will eliminate each other off, so there's only one person from Connecticut in the top of this game. Now, the thing is, you can argue and say that's not legit. Okay, then why is it that for the entire next 2 to 3 years, every Super Turbo tournament I entered, whether it was the PlayStation 2 version, the Anniversary Edition collection that came out, there was like 2 or 3 other versions that every tournament just kept deciding to adopt a new one. Why was I placing at every tournament after that? It wasn't like, oh, it was a flash in the pan fluke that Phil once placed at EVO and that was it. I went ahead and for the next 2 to 3 years was dominating the tournament circuit in Super Turbo everywhere I went. There was one year, the year after that, it actually was, I qualified at so many qualifiers for EVO that they had to eliminate
He's lying
some
about
of the
this part too. We just heard this. In 2005 was the fluke. 2006, he supposedly went undefeated. 2007 was when he went to 5 qualifiers. He went to 5 different EVO qualifiers and won them. So he's got his own story messed up. Or he's just out and out lying. And then, and this is something I really want you guys to take away. I think I emphasized this in the last video, but either which way. His best showings, apparently, are all on console ports, not the actual arcade version. I want you to think about that. He talks all that shit about those other pro players or whatever. They at least placed on these ports as well, but they were actually good at the arcade version. When have any of you guys actually heard anything about anything when it comes to the actual arcade version? His real claim to fame is all on console ports. If you really break it all down, he's admitting it right here. That's where his real run was at. On console ports. Or arcade ported to console, I should say. Whatever. Same thing. Jesus Christ.
That I had and give it to other people. I went all around the country qualifying for EVO, and I had like 5 qualifying spots for the fucking finals to get seeds, so they gave away 4 of my spots to other people who had placed under me. But this is what I mean. People want to ignore all that and say, oh, because Phil played a PS1 version, it's illegitimate. Well, no. I played a PS1 version. I played Anniversary Edition. I played the other PS2 version of the game that came out after that. And by the way, I also placed on arcade cabinet tournaments all within a 3-year span. And no one said shit then, but now all of a sudden, let's erase that because we're a bunch of fucking idiots trying to have an agenda instead of looking at the facts. So these people can just go fuck themselves. These are not competitive players who are criticizing my placings. People who were around back then at the time and played against me admitted I was good. Go ask the people I was playing against from the years of 2005 through like 2008 if Phil's good at Super Turbo, and they'll tell you yes. No one's going to say no. Everyone knew it. Top players from all around the country wanted to play me because they knew I was good, and it was a good thing to play the best, to get the best competition in, and to learn the best strategies. It's just dumb shit that idiots make up. Okay. That's kind of the history of the Super Turbo story. And a lot of people don't know that. They don't know that behind-the-scenes story, that I was a loner, and I didn't have a lot of support, and I blew them out 3 years in a fucking row, and yet they still, to this day, they'll say that I suck, and I only won at subpar versions of the game, even though those were the versions picked for EVO. I wasn't picking the version of the game for fucking EVO. If EVO would pick the arcade version every year, I would have played in the arcade version every year, but this was their excuse. Well, every year EVO uses a different version of Super Turbo. Phil still does well, so that means he sucks. No, it means that I adapt to whatever I need to play at a tournament level, while the old school Super Turbo players couldn't. They were so ingrained in their ways of playing the arcade version, they could not adapt to a new version, while every year I was adapting and still fucking winning, despite all the changes to the game and the gameplay being a different version.
Yeah, that right there, I mean, granted, it's probably some type of gas buildup or whatever, but really, he meant to say more phantom hooving here. Phantom hoov is missing. Really him placing, not winning. You didn't win every tournament you entered in. You placed, but you didn't win. You didn't win all of them anyway. But I thought we could, and then that's past Phil. Let's jump to present Phil. I thought I could ask any pro player and they would say that you were good. And they traveled around the country to play the best and get the best strategies. Well, then why is Phil, this is probably no more than 2000, this has to be like 2005, 2006 Phil. Probably 2006. Why would Phil from 4 or 5 years ago sit there and say that you were the lone wolf out there, no one supported you, no one gave a fuck about you, and it was basically you against the world, against all odds? This is what happens when you're a fucking tard and you put every aspect of your fucking life on the internet. And here's the thing. This video wasn't supposed to make it out anyway. So theoretically, if this video didn't exist, even with all the other videos that contradicted here or there, if this video didn't exist, then Phil could literally go ahead and make his argument and get away with it. Or people would just give him the benefit of the doubt, which is something that happens a lot. But this video right here debunks all that. And then what MrHuth stuff ended up doing is just the icing on the cake. Wow.
Super Turbo that was played at EVO every year. But they don't disrespect, they won't respect that. To this day, those West Coast players disrespect the fuck out of me. And I'm like, what did I ever do? It's just dumb shit that idiots make up. Okay. Bullshit. Bullshit, I didn't do anything. What? Dude, I'm not doing anything. He's getting all these kicks. Look at that. I'm not doing anything. I'm just waiting, and he's getting low kicks standing roundhouse, yet I'm not attacking, so it shouldn't hit. Even if one hits, he shouldn't get 2 hits in a row. That means the connection sucks shit. It's complete bullshit. Complete fucking bullshit.
Oh, this was beautiful. Oh, this was beautiful. God damn. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Give me a few minutes, not even a few minutes, but just give me a little bit of time to go ahead and square up, and I'll give you guys my final thoughts and I'll let you guys go for the day. Oh my god. Yikes. Yikes. Oh, hurtful. Hurtful. Yet again, ladies and gentlemen, you know the slogan. Give Phil enough rope and he'll hang himself. Yet again, like I said, it'd be beautiful if it wasn't so tragic. Defiant Sniff. I wouldn't say I feel vindication or anything. Like I said, you know what I'm saying, you got to believe in what you're saying to some degree and whatnot. This helped tie in a lot of it, though. A lot of it. Big ups to MrHuth stuff, Bill Purnell, Snort Purnell, and whatnot. Yikes. Oh, this is good. This is real good. I kind of want to go over those Q&A videos now. I think Bill Purnell has all of them. I think LSB may have a playlist. I think I have some of them. I don't think I have all of them. Yeah, I think I want to do that. I want to see what other gems are in there. I want to see what other gold dust or whatever's in that. That might be a project for later on in the year. That might be good. Maybe I'll do that on the fight. I kind of want to do that over here, actually. We'll see. Or maybe I'll split them up. We'll do some here. We'll do some on the Fight Club channel. Sharing is caring. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So, what is our takeaway from all this? At the end of the day, as it pertains to Phil's skills, ability, whatever, it's all kind of, sadly, and this is probably going to be a harsh term, but I'm going to say it anyway, it's all contaminated. It's all contaminated by his own lies, insecurities. Phil, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Phil hurt himself more than any detractor ever could. So going through and trying to figure out what's real and what's not it's whatever. The only thing, if I have to say I'm contending against anything, I'm not even contending against Phil. I'm just contending against people who are giving him the benefit of the doubt. And even then, I'm not even contending against you. I mean, you know what I'm saying? We agree to disagree. But the proof is always out there in some form or fashion. There is always some channel out there that has the reality, the bottom line, if you will, of what all this is. Or in actuality, the truth. And the truth is that Phil wasn't what he said he was. It was something people said back then, and it's something that needs to be expressed now. And maybe me saying, oh, just giving him the benefit of the doubt is not dismissive, but is giving people who say that a way out. And maybe that's not necessarily the case. It's just, yet again, as I said in the first video, who wants to sit there and no one is comfortable with labeling somebody a born loser, a natural born failure, if you will. And yet Phil is all those things, or both of those things, I should say. It's just what he is. There isn't enough charity that can help him. He is as morally bankrupt as he is financially. You think people throwing money at Phil day in day out is a waste. He's a bottomless pit financially, and he'll never get any better. But also giving him moral support is equally as frivolous. You're not going to get anything out of it. You're not going to prove any real point. You know what I'm saying? Don't be wrong. Bashing Phil just for the sake of it is funny. It's amusing. It's fun. I do it. But I also have a reason to. You know what I'm saying? I have a reason to. We all do, to be honest. But I mean, you should always take anything that he says, I say, anybody says with a grain of salt until you can find it out for yourself. This right here is just another piece on the board and whatnot. He's been checkmated plenty of damn times. I'm just greedy. So I'm going to continue on my search because I want more. I think we all deserve more. But from what I'm seeing here, this right here closes it up. Bill Purnell and MrHuth stuff cleaned this up real easy. That's his legacy. There is nobody that's really going to back him up. There is nobody going to say that. I mean, granted, most of those people have gotten older, moved on, had families, and done shit, so they may throw some charity at him, but then that's what it has to be looked at as. Charity. Oh, Phil Brunell's still around? DSP is still around? He wasn't that bad. You know. He wasn't as great as he says he was, and that fourth place finish at EVO is stupid, but, you know, he's not, you know, he was alright for what he was, so on and so forth. I can tell you that because I've heard those type of conversations. So, I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is. I will continue my campaign, though, either which way. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening in. I very much appreciate it. And I will see you guys for the Snort Report the Wings report, and then I have like a crossover show between the two of them. I still need to work on that, and then we'll get a pilot out for that one. But I'll see you guys when I see you, to be honest with you. I'm not sure if this is going to be premiered or not. It might. But, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Snort Report, and this is DSP News. Always late, never breaking, unreliable coverage that you can't count on. Oh, yes, a GTG Network and Productions. For DSP News, for the Snort Report, and for SnortBucks Coffee. I've been your host, / anchor, GTG, and I'm signing off. Take care of yourselves, guys. The Snorts are out there. The Snorts are out there. Later, guys.